Please welcome to the show America's accountant, Dan Geltrude. Dan, thanks for taking the time to be on the show today. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I don't know where to start because we can talk about inflationary things. We can talk about what's happening with the treasuries and the likes. But where is a good jumping off point for you to kind of get the point across about how big this really could be?
Well, this could be huge, and let's hope it doesn't go down that path, because to me, we're at a tipping point of what's happening in the Middle East. So where I would really start this discussion really relates to oil and to energy, Scott, because we have the Middle East, which, as we all know, is very, very rich in oil. However, Israel and Palestine are not exactly large oil producers. So one would think, well, maybe it won't be so bad in that area. Well, that depends, because this situation could easily spill over to something really, really bad. And an escalation in this war could absolutely impact oil prices. And let me tell you quite simply how it can happen, because if we look at how history has played out, we go back to the Yom Kippur War in 1973 when Israel was attacked. And what happened was OPEC got together and had a huge oil embargo against the United States. Now, could something like that happen again? It could. It could. I don't necessarily think that's likely, but we wouldn't have to worry about that, Scott, if we were energy independent. And I know we'll talk about inflation and a lot of other things, but to me, and you and I have talked about this, it begins and ends with energy.
Well, you're exactly right. And just so everybody knows, that's how the U.S. got to where it's standing in the world today. I mean, we have a plentiful oil supply beneath our feet, 400 years plus, some say. And when you have a cheap and ready, available supply of energy, that makes you a rich nation. And if you're a rich nation, you have much better health care and much better education. And that makes you continue to be a rich nation. But when you disarm yourself, knowingly disarm yourself, hurt yourself by cutting off your own oil supplies, and then maybe even draining your strategic petroleum reserve while you're at it, in the midst of some pretty big crises out there. We already were facing Russia-Ukraine. You've already seen the saber-rattling with China and Taiwan, and now you throw Israel versus the rest of the Middle East into the mix. This is a cauldron that could really boil over, and I'm afraid that if you get the wrong people involved at the right time, that's exactly what could happen.
Well, to some extent, this could be a self-inflicted wound to the United States from an energy standpoint, right? Because we could be energy independent. We have so much oil. So there's no reason for us to be dependent upon countries that are absolutely not our friends. So are we going to learn our lesson here? I doubt it, at least with this administration. And speaking of the administration, Scott, you know, when America is weak, that's where you start to have all these problems popping up around the world, and it ends up being a very unstable planet. And that's what we're looking at here. So, well, listen, war is a bad thing, and we should always try to avoid it. But when we have one of our allies attacked the way it was, we can't just stand by. We are going to be involved, and simple cause and effect. There are going to be consequences to the U.S. with this war.
Yeah, and the knock-on effect, if you want to bring it back to money, Dan, is this. A higher oil price is going to be inflationary. I've heard wild calls, well over $100 a barrel, right? We'll see if that happens. But goes to your point about what happened in 1973. But on the other hand, is that the other safety flight to safety is our bonds. And when people buy our bonds, that means interest rates come down, which goes against what everybody's been trying to do to slow the economy down because of our inflationary problem. So you got higher oil prices and cheaper interest rates. That's not going to do anything good for the Fed. You got 20 seconds.
No. So that just goes to there are so many potential consequences to any decision that's made. But listen, I think the bottom line here is that we are going to be in this for a while.
I don't want to hear that. All right. Maybe that's the truth. That's why I don't want to hear it. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. Dan Geltrude coming to us from Nutley, New Jersey. Thank you very much for taking the time today, Dan.